Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Preaching and Teaching Broadcasting, especially St. Martin de Porres Parish and Sarah Hita. Good to have you all here. Well, we're on the Gospel of Mark, and now we're at the point Jesus has entered the Judean section, and he's going to have the last few months of his life getting ready for the ultimate reality of his messianic calling, him to die on the cross. And before that occurs, he's getting his disciples ready to face that reality, because if Jesus is going to be captured, tried, and executed, and on the third day rise from the dead, then what about his disciples, most especially the apostolic 12? They do have a certain interest in this whole issue. So we start this morning with the third prediction of the Passion. This is Mark chapter 10, verses 32 to 34. They were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking with them, and they were amazed, and those who followed them were afraid. This is, again, it might be sinking in that something is going to happen that's not going to be all that welcomed. He took the 12 again aside and began to tell them what was going to happen to them and what was going to happen to him, saying, "See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man," which we already talked about, Daniel 7:14, that the Son of Man is that heavenly divine human being that's in the kavod or chariot throne room of God, and God hands over jurisdiction to this individual, this heavenly divine human individual, complete jurisdiction over every language, people, and nation, and he will create his own kingdom, which will be everlasting kingdom, I might add. And so Jesus is saying, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and they will hand him over to the Gentiles. They will mock him, spit upon him, flog him, and kill him, and after 3 days he will rise again." So this is the last and the third prediction of the actual Passion. Matthew is pretty much the same as Mark. However, in Luke, there's a slight variance in the interpretation and the understanding by the 12 of what is going to indeed happen. Luke chapter 18, verses 33, Jesus says the following to them: "After they have flogged him, they will kill him, and on the third day he will rise again." But they understood nothing about all of these things. In fact, what was said was hidden from them, and they did not grasp what he said. Now that's a different understanding of what's going on. So Luke wants to add that other qualification. Did they understand fully what Jesus had to go through? In Mark and Luke, there's a silence about that. In fact, in the second Passion prediction, they were afraid to ask him any more questions, because the first time it was brought up at Caesarea Philippi, Jesus turns on Peter after Peter rebukes Jesus about doing this, and Jesus calls him the adversary, or Satan. "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block." In Luke, after the third prediction, but what they understood nothing about all these things. In fact, he said it was hidden from them. Luke has this understanding that perhaps this whole thing, the ultimate meaning, was hidden by them, from them. And I would presume it would be hidden as an act of God. Maybe they were not supposed to understand it yet. But again, this is one of those interesting variants that's not found in Matthew and in Mark. Well, we're now at a point. This is a very interesting narrative coming up next, Mark chapter 10. So right after the third prediction, the audacity of James and John toward Jesus's predicament of going to Jerusalem and being handed over. It seems as if the next little event clearly indicates they don't have a clue about what is in fact going to take place. Let's read the narrative. Mark chapter 10, 35 to 45. I find this fascinating. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him being Jesus, and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." That's a very interesting question. Whatever we ask you, Jesus, we want you to grant it. Okay. Fine. And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said, "Grant us to sit one at your right and one at your left in your glory. When you come into your kingdom, we want to be governors, one at your right, one at your left." They don't have a clue. He just said he's going to die. They don't get it. But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you're asking." He's absolutely right about that. And then he says the following: "Are you able to drink the cup that I will drink?" This is the cup of deliverance, by the way, the cup of salvific redemption. And that's only done by the cross, the blood of the cross. "Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" To be completely immersed to do the Father's will. To be completely transformed by dying, and by dying, destroy death forever. Are you willing to be completely transformed by this activity? But that's what baptism does. The catechumen goes into the water, the old Adam, the old creation goes into the water, comes out of the water, a new creation, a new existence. The passion, death, and resurrection will be Jesus's second baptism. In that regard, it's analogous, okay? They replied, "We are able." "Oh, really?" Yeah. Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink. And with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left hand is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been reserved or prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. No kidding. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those who they recognize as rulers and lord it over them, the great ones are tyrants over them. That cannot be among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be the servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be the slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life for the ransom of many." So his life is a ransom for the many. Death and resurrection is a form of ransom to pay the debt of sin, to pay the debt of Adam's disobedience to God. Jesus will set you free. He is the ransom note. He's the means by which the sin of Adam will in fact be nullified, and the ultimate effect of the sin of Adam, namely death, will be wiped out forever. He's the ransom on the cross. He is going to save you. He's going to pay the debt. Now, what's fascinating is that this must have been so embarrassing to, to the early apostolic community that this is found in Matthew chapter 20, 21 to 28. It's so embarrassing that James and John would even ask this of Jesus after the third prediction. They're not getting it, okay? And so there's a slight variant in Matthew's gospel. It isn't James and John that asked Jesus, can we sit at your right and at your left? It's his mother. It's their mother. So in Matthew, there's a slight variance. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, again, one of respect and posture and homage, she asked a favor of him. And he said to her, "What do you want?" And she said to him, "Declare," namely proclaim, declare that these two sons of mine will sit, one at your right and one at your left, in your kingdom. They're still thinking that he's going to be some social, political king. They haven't gotten it yet. But Jesus answered, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink?" They said to him, we are able." And he said to them, "You will drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and one at my left is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my heavenly Father. The Father decides." And then the rest is the same. They haven't resolved the fact that Jesus is not going to fulfill the social, political, ideological expectations of the Messiah. He's not going to do that. They're still thinking, oh, well, this idea about going down to Jerusalem and suffering and dying and rising from the dead, well, we don't really understand that. So I think what we kind of get from this is that he's going to have, he is going to initiate his kingdom. He never said that. So there's a complete disconnect between what Jesus is saying about what he has to do, about the social, political, empirical, messianic attribution of the Messiah held by the Jews at that time. And then thirdly, the understanding of either of those by the 12 apostles. So there's a big misunderstanding. It's only later do they realize, we did not get it. In fact, we didn't get it at all. And it's only till after Christ's resurrection that we finally understand that this is a part of the Father's plan. So at this particular juncture, they're now coming to Jericho. This is Mark chapter 10, 46 to 52. They came to Jericho as he and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho. Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar. Bartimaeus. Bar means son of. So son of Timaeus. So Bartimaeus. Okay, so that's not his name. That's just Mark is simply saying he is the son of Timaeus. Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy upon me." So he's saying, Jesus, son of David. Son of David is a messianic title. Okay? So he's professing the messianic expectation of Jesus by calling him the son of David. Okay. Jesus, son of David, have mercy upon me. Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out all the more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy upon me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying, "Take heart, get up, he's calling you." So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. That is a very important gesture. That cloak is the means of his shelter. That cloak is the means of his protection. That cloak is all that he has to keep himself free from the natural weather elements. He's throwing it off. He realizes that Jesus is going to do something. Or in fact, Bartimaeus knows what he's going to ask Jesus to do for him. He's throwing off the old life. He is in fact throwing off the only protection that he has. That's a very keen gesture. So somehow he knows Jesus is calling for me. I've been yelling out for him, and now he's called me. His disciples are going to bring me to him. And at this point, there's going to be a dramatic change. Okay, so to continue the text. And they called the blind man, saying, "Take heart, get up, he's calling for you." So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to him. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith," is very important. There's no cure in the synoptic tradition without the faith principle. "Your faith has made you well. Your belief and confidential trust in me has made you well." Immediately, he regained his sight and followed him on the way. In Luke, immediately he regained his sight and followed him, glorifying God, and all the people, when they saw it, praised God. What we tend to miss when we end this little event is that he regained his sight and followed him on the way. Followed him on the way. He's a disciple. Where is he going? He's going with Jesus, and Jesus is going to die. Does Bartimaeus know this? The disciples, try to prevent Jesus from fulfilling what the Father's asked him to do. Bartimaeus here, at least in Mark's gospel, followed Jesus, perhaps not knowing what's going to happen to him. But the exact same language that he followed Jesus is the exact same terminology that Jesus uses when he asks people to be his followers. He is a disciple of Jesus, and he is now someone that will attest who Jesus is. So on one level, Bartimaeus now sees clearly, just like in John chapter 9, the man born blind. The moment Jesus is arrested, as I said before in other broadcasts, when Jesus is in fact interrogated by Annas, the former high priest and father-in-law of Caiaphas, the present high priest. He asked him two questions. Jesus, what is your teaching? And who are your disciples? Who are your disciples? We have you. We want names now. We want to make sure that this movement ends. So anyone that's been cured by Jesus, and of course Jesus cures the multitude. This I've said on multiple broadcasts before. You are now in danger. You might as well wear some form of a sign, some form of a placard. Jesus is what he claims to be. You are in grave danger. They have Jesus. They'll get the apostolic 12. And Annas saying, we want to know who your disciples are so we can round them up. You're in the act of insurrection. And we are going to stop this right now, or Rome will come in and Rome will take over. And we fear the fact they will destroy our nation and destroy our temple. Better for one man to die than to lose the whole nation of Israel. We're not going to allow that. Better to kill Jesus and stamp this out once and for all than to lose everything. So Bartimaeus is following Jesus, and Jesus is now going to enter into his passion. There's a price tag for seeing, just like John chapter 9, the man born blind. There's a price tag. When the blind man now seeing, because he's been cured by Jesus, he is interrogated by the Pharisees with the understanding, how did this man cure you? So they drag in the parents of the man born blind. Is this your son? Yes. Was he born blind? Yes. This man, our son. This is our son, and yes, he was born blind. Then why does he now see? We don't know why he can now see. He's of age. Ask him. Because they were told, anyone that followed Jesus will be excommunicated from the synagogue. That's why the parents of the man born blind says, well, he's old enough, ask him. They didn't want to get involved. So after this little interrogation, the blind man is cast out of the temple. Jesus finds him and says, do you believe in the Son of Man? Yes. Yeah. So he now sees his parents for the first time. He's always heard them, but now he sees them. And now there's a new relationship. That evening would have been a very fascinating dinner conversation. Why did you not support me when they asked me about Jesus? Do you know, Mom and Dad, I've been cast out. I've been excommunicated from the synagogue because I am a follower of Jesus. You did not support me. So you're still in good keeping with the synagogue. I have been expelled. We now have a different relationship. So yeah, I now see you for what you are. See, that's what happens when you try to follow Christ. You become a new person. Once you start to follow Christ, you are never left alone. You're never left alone. So Bartimaeus is going where Jesus is in fact going, and his disciples don't have a clue. They're still wrestling. Jesus, when you come into your kingdom, can we sit one at your right, one at your left? Well, no. That's not going to take place. Okay, we're now at Mark 11, chapter 11, verse 11. Then he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. And when he had looked around at everything, it was already late. He went out to Bethany with the 12. In Matthew and in Luke, Jesus cleanses the temple. That was the last straw. That whole episode is omitted by Mark. Now, in Mark 11, 12 to 14, the cursing of the fig tree. Now, the fig tree, like the vineyard, represents Israel. You have to keep that in mind. It's one of the metaphors for Israel. And this is not found in Luke, it's found in Matthew 21 and Luke chapter 11, 12 to 14. Let's read the episode. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf. The tree has leaf, but it doesn't have fruit. And the fruit here is faith. Doesn't have it. Seeing in a distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see whether perhaps he would find anything on it to eat. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. Israel has beautiful foliage, large fig trees, leaves. The leaves are big and beautiful. No fruit. So when the Messiah comes, will you have the fruit of faith to accept who Jesus really is as the long-awaited Messiah? And the answer is they're not ready. It's not the season. However, this is the time for the visitation. So they're not ready for it. It's very fascinating to just think about this for a moment. Are the 12 apostles ready to understand Jesus's truly messianic role? And the answer is no. They know that he's going to die and rise, but they have a hard time understanding the ultimate meaning of that. So they are clueless. That's why James and John asked Jesus, when you come into your kingdom, can we sit one on your right, one on your left? It's so embarrassing that in Matthew you have the mother of mother of James and John doing it. It's so embarrassing. No one's getting it. So now he's in Jerusalem, and the symbol of Israel. Israel, do you understand the expectations of Jesus as Messiah, as prophesied by the book of the prophet Jeremiah, by the book of the prophet Isaiah? Do you understand? They don't understand. The fruit of faith is absent. Okay. So Mark is saying this is not going to play well. This is not going to play well at all. What happens? So at this point, Mark 11, 15 to 19, then they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling and those who were buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. This is an armed takeover. You are stopping the sacrificial activity of Israel. He was teaching and saying, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a den of robbers. And the chief priests and the scribes heard of this. They kept looking for a way to kill him, but they were afraid of him because of the whole crowd was spellbound by his teaching. And when evening came, Jesus and his disciples went out of the city. Many of these Jesus movies have Jesus going into the temple precincts and overturning a few tables, and you think that's it. No, that's not it. Those of you who have ever gone to Jerusalem and seen the ruins of the temple know very well that the portico, the temple treasury was a whole portico of buildings, shops, enclosures for buying and selling. You had to exchange money. Roman Gentile money had the image of the emperor on it. Well, the emperor is a divine personage. Well, that's idolatrous. So you can't bring that coin into sacred space in the temple. So you had to exchange money. So you had to take the Roman coinage with the image of the emperor, who is the son of God, I might add, change it for Jewish liturgical money. And with that money, you would buy those things that would be offered up in sacrifices, doves and whatever was necessary for this or that type of sacrificial activity. So Jesus comes in and he overthrows that. Why? He calls the people, you have made my father's house. So if the temple is my father's house and I'm the son of the father, this is also my house. And you've turned it into a den of thieves, namely extortion. Those items, those commodities that would be offered up had to be of pristine origin, okay, without any defect whatsoever. And that meant that the amount charged would be exorbitant. Many scholars believe that, in fact, that's the issue, that the sellers of those commodities that would be offered up in sacrifice were selling defective merchandise at an extreme cost. So you violate the virtue of justice. Give me that which is true and just. So the virtue of justice, give God what is due to him and give the person that's buying the stuff offered up for sacrifice something that's not defective. So you're cheating God and you're cheating your neighbor by giving false, poor products that are defective, and you're charging an exorbitant amount of money. You turn my father's house into a den of thieves. Jesus then takes a whip and then starts to get them out. That's in John chapter 2, by the way, also. This would have been the final straw that broke the camel's back. And he prohibited people from buying and selling, effectively stopping the sacrificial activity of Israel. You can't do that. There were certain daily sacrifices that had to be done. And Jesus is prohibiting liturgical behavior. And he casts them out. Now, he could not have done this on his own. That means this is an armed takeover. And this was a blatant display of power. At the end of the day, he leaves the temple precincts. Okay. This was the final action. Now, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, this comes at the end of Jesus' preaching and teaching. But in John's gospel, it is the exact opposite. It comes at the beginning of Jesus's ministry. Okay. But in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, this is the end, and at this point, they are out to have him executed. So they leave the temple precincts, and then in Mark chapter 11, 20 to 26, in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree withered at its roots. So the fig tree that Jesus wanted fruit from the day before, it's all withered. Okay. Then Peter remembered and said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered. And Jesus answered them, have faith in God. For I tell you, if you say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and if you do not have any doubt in your heart, but believe what you say, it will come to pass, and it will be done for you. So I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe, and you will indeed receive it, and it will be yours. Whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your own sins. So Peter says, Rabbi, the tree that you curse is withered. Yes, Israel is going to fall. The temple is going to be destroyed. And yes, in 70 AD, that's exactly what occurred. This is all raises that ultimate question. Jesus, by what authority do you do these things? Obviously, you have not received delegation from the Sanhedrin. Obviously, you are not given approval by the Jewish eldership, by the Torah teachers, by the scribes, Pharisees, and Sadducees. Okay. So who are you and what are you about? You've just shut down the temple. The image of Israel as a beautiful fig tree, but it's out of season. There is no fruit of faith. The following day, that fig tree has withered. Are you saying, Jesus, that there will be a time in which the temple and the nation and people of Israel will be destroyed? The answer is yes. It will wither. It all goes back to Jesus. Then who do you claim who and what you are? Who are you, Jesus? And where do you get your authority to do these things? These things we will talk about this evening. So I now, Jay, open up for question and answer. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Father Jude. So at this time, we will be moving on to the Q&A portion of our meeting. First, I'd like to open up the floor to anyone from San Martin de Porres Parish. If you have a question, please raise your hand or activate your raised hand button. All right, actually, if anyone has a question, go ahead and raise your hand or press the raised hand button. Marilyn and Peter, if you would unmute.
Father Jude, you gave a nice explanation about the withered fig tree, but it keeps bothering me because I don't want to be a pest about this, but it was not the nature given by God of the fig tree to have figs on it at that time, but Jesus made it wither anyway. That's still
that's correct. Yeah. The issue here is that when God calls you to exemplify your faith, be ready, whether it's in season or out of season. And Israel had many times been faithful to God. You look at the Old Testament, and also many times Israel was not faithful to God. And this is one of those seasons where Israel, from the perspective of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Israel was unwilling to recognize the final visitation of God's messianic role. And so even though it was not the season, it still could have been ready, because when God calls, God calls. And unfortunately, Israel just simply, as it's done in its past, not listen to the prophets, prophet after prophet that God sent, return to God, return to God, return to God. And there's no compliance. And so at this point, Jesus, again, it's a sign. See, John the Baptist made it very clear when he was baptizing that Israel, if you do not repent this time, the axe is to the root of the tree, not just the tree. The tree has already been cut down when John the Baptist preaches, and the tree is Israel. So now what's left is the stump with the roots. John is saying, if you do not repent and recognize the appointed time, this time the axe is not to the tree, it's to the entire rooting underneath the tree, and it will be destroyed. And in 7 AD, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
That helps. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. Anyone else?
There is a question in the chat box.
Go ahead.
Let's see, that question comes from you guys. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and just read the question.
Go ahead, Peter.
Read the question.
Okay.
Okay, I'll read my own question.
Yeah,
Was there any other way for the Jewish populace to obtain sacrificial animals besides going to the merchants in the temple area?
Oh, great question, Peter. Quick. Yeah. Okay. The Sadducees were members of the Jewish aristocracy. They controlled the temple. They controlled the temple precincts. And that meant that any commodity offered up in sacrifice had to be approved by them, and it had to be kosher without any defect whatsoever. So the animals, the types of vegetation used to offer up cereal offerings, and the rest, the doves, the pigeons, whatever was offered up, had to be absolutely kosher. And so the Sadducees ran the temple concession. So it was a profit-making endeavor. And so if you were going to offer something up in sacrifice, it had to meet a certain particular standard of approval. And I would presume that there were people that set up their livelihood based on the fact that certain commodities had to be offered up. And so I would presume that the Sadducees ran the entire temple concession. They ran everything. Yeah.
And
So it's not a matter of, can I get something from my backyard? No, I don't think so.
but that means they probably were preying on unwary pilgrims because the locals must have known better.
Yeah. I mean, it is incredible. I mean, the fact that they would say, yeah, you have to buy from us. You have to buy from us. And we should have been giving you products without defection, but they didn't do that, so that's why Jesus said, you are cheating God and you're cheating God's people. So in John 2, he makes a whip and casts them out. This was an armed takeover. I mean, it is incredible that Jesus and his disciples, because he could not have done it on his own, okay? And with full purpose, we are going to stop the activity of Israel when it comes to sacrifice. We will stop temple liturgical sacrifice. And we will only allow it to happen again once we choose to leave. That would have been the final straw. He has to be killed. Insurrection. Yeah. Anyone else?
Mary Ann had a question in the chat box, Jay.
Let's see. Mary Ann, if you can hear us, go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Okay, so Father, her question says, couldn't the Sadducees have had Jesus arrested immediately?
Yeah, well, the problem is, and this is found in the other gospel narratives, it's the Passover. Okay, so if you arrest Jesus during the Passover period, Jerusalem normally would have approximately 100,000 people living there. At Passover time, it's triple because people have to come in and to offer sacrifice. Okay, so it's 300,000 people. Okay, this would mean that the Roman troops would be on high alert right now. Do you want a mob action? Do you want a revolt? Do you want massive bloodshedding? And in the other gospel, it makes it very clear we can't arrest him during the daylight, and we can't we can't arrest him when he's in the temple precincts, or we will have a riot. And so technically, I think they could have, but it would have been a bloodbath. So they're just waiting. They're just waiting for an opportune time. And so it's so they're having the Passover meal. The meal is done. It's dark. They've been drinking. They're tired. They're sleeping. It's pitch black. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a whole cohort of soldiers and others with lanterns and torches and knives and swords come upon Jesus. And they have to make sure we get the right one. That's why Judas comes up and indicate by talking and kissing Jesus, he's the one. Grab him. It's pitch black. Okay, so yeah, how do we get Jesus without causing a riot? And that's what they do. They wait till the Passover meal is done. Everyone's been eating and drinking. They're tired. They go to the Garden of Gethsemane to relax and have some leisure time. And all of a sudden, the temple guards, temple police arrive, and he's arrested. Interesting motives. Anyone else?
All right, thank you all for your questions this morning. Just a reminder that we have all of Father Jude's talks on YouTube, and you're welcome to visit our website, stdominics.org/father.jude, to find those web videos, as well as any other information about this series. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We hope you can come to our evening session, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.
Take care. God bless.